I really did think that when RFK Jr. dropped out of the race, it was going to benefit Trump. I thought that Trump was really going to get boosted. But lo and behold, August 26th, according to 538 polls, she still is up by 3.4% over Donald Trump. That's right. Even after RFK Jr. has dropped out, we're still seeing Harris maintain her lead against Donald Trump, which is just fantastic. And on top of this, the DNC was a massive success that actually left the Republicans super triggered and even more divided. They started fighting amongst themselves about Tim Walz's son crying. Trump had a huge meltdown on Twitter about Kamala's speech and whatnot. It was just absolutely ridiculous. So for those of you who didn't see it, here are a couple highlights from Kamala Harris's DNC speech that was generally incredibly well received, and even better, the DNC outperformed the RNC in amount of views. So that's also really good. Here's a couple highlights of Kamala Harris's speech.
Please welcome the Democratic nominee for president, Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
Let me start by thanking my most incredible husband, Doug. And happy anniversary, Dougie. I love you so very much. As the eldest child, I saw how the world would sometimes treat her. But my mother never lost her cool. She was tough, courageous, a trailblazer in the fight for women's health. She taught us to never complain about injustice, but do something about it. In our system of justice, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us.
See how instantly, I know we're just watching highlights right now, but even just seeing a little bit of this speech, she comes off as much more relatable, friendly, and unifying. That's something that really stood out to me throughout her speech. It seemed to be very, very focused on unifying people despite disagreements. And I think that that shows a really good level of respectability for a political candidate. I mean, let's be real. Trump would be up here and be like, "Thank you. I know that all the immigrants didn't want to even see me up here right now. They would have rather had me shot." And that would have been the whole speech, you know? But with the DNC, we actually have some unifying rhetoric and some positive, hopeful messaging.
And to be clear, my entire career, I've only had one client, the people. And so, on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America. Our nation, with this election, has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. Not as members of any one party or faction, but as Americans. And let me say, I know there are people of various political views watching tonight, and I want you to know, I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self.
And literally just like that, Kamala Harris is now far more patriotic than Trump could ever hope or dream to be. Because Trump, what does he do? He sows division. He literally capitalized on the division of this nation to win the election in 2016. Trump throws fuel on the fire. Trump essentially undermined the country that he claims to love and put first. He even passed tax write-offs and he passed tax bills and whatnot to benefit the wealthy. It just doesn't make any sense to me that Trump is still trying to capitalize on this persona of a patriot when Trump is not a patriot. At least he's not really for America first, because he doesn't even care about all Americans. He pits Americans against each other. But Kamala Harris, here she is actually acting like a fucking grown-up. She understands that there are disagreements. There are different political parties. People have different ideas. But she is vowing to be a president to everybody regardless of that, and to put the country before herself. I don't think Trump does that at all. Like, I genuinely don't think that Trump puts America first. At least if he does, how come his tax bills didn't benefit everyday Americans? How come his tariffs actually hurt everyday Americans? How come he further divided everyday Americans?
In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious. Consider not only the chaos and calamity when he was in office, but also the gravity of what has happened since he lost the last election. Donald Trump—
That's true. That's another thing also. Donald Trump, he claims to love America. He claims to put America first. He's the patriot. Yet he constantly undermines and attacks America's institutions. He attacks the criminal justice system, even going as far as to cast doubt among voters' minds as to whether or not they can even trust their country to provide a fair and free election. Remember when Trump said it might be okay to undo the Constitution if there's voter fraud, which of course he then tried to walk back on?
When he failed, he sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol, where they assaulted law enforcement officers. When politicians in his own—
This is also really good that she's saying, like, reiterating the attack on law enforcement, because that's something right there that appeals more to independents, moderates, Republicans even.
own party begged him to call off the mob and send help. He did the opposite. He fanned the flames. And now, for an entirely different set of crimes, he was found guilty of fraud by a jury of everyday Americans and separately found liable for committing sexual abuse. Consider—
There you go. Also, fellow everyday Americans, a jury found Donald Trump guilty on 34 felony counts. Does that not mean anything? No, it doesn't. Trump undermines that. He doesn't care about America first. He doesn't care about American institutions at all. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with criticizing American institutions. But Trump, what he does is just directly attack them and say they need to be done away with, and that's the end of it. And that they're all biased against him. The end. That's pretty much Trump's fucking argument. It's like a narcissist baby throwing a temper tantrum.
what he intends to do if we give him power again. Consider his explicit intent to set free violent extremists who assaulted those law enforcement officers at the Capitol. His explicit intent to jail journalists, political opponents, and anyone he sees as the enemy.
Dude, Republicans are seething right now. She's literally using like Republican-esque rhetoric, releasing violent terrorists on our soil, on our American citizens. Oh my God, dude. That's like the Republican talking point for immigrants, but she's using it on Trump supporters who attacked the Capitol. That is fucking priceless. You just know Trump supporters are seething at that.
His explicit intent to deploy our active duty military against our own citizens. Consider the power he will have especially after the United States Supreme Court just ruled that he would be immune from criminal prosecution.
That's true, but for clarity, it's immune from criminal prosecution for acts committed while president. It doesn't mean that Trump, as a regular citizen, is immune. It's still, however, very fucking dangerous, but what Trump wants is exactly that. When you look at the Republicans' ultimate goal to gut the FBI and to gut the Department of Justice and to consolidate more and more power in the executive branch, that is what Trump wants. And I can tell you right now, that is not democracy, and that's not what America wants.
Just imagine Donald Trump with no guardrails, and how he would use the immense powers of the presidency of the United States, not to improve your life, not to strengthen our national security, but to serve the only client he has ever had.
Himself.
Himself.
Yep.
But America?
It's absolutely true, though. I mean, even Donald Trump's tax cuts and everything else, right? What did we see? We saw a slight benefit, or it's said to slightly benefit the middle class for a little bit. However, they reach a point where they shift back to benefiting the wealthy again. Trump's tax breaks had ulterior motives. The 2017 Trump tax law was skewed to the rich, expensive, and failed to deliver on its promises. Households with incomes in the top 1% will receive an average tax cut of more than $60,000 in 2025, compared to an average tax cut of less than $500 for households in the bottom 60%. As a share of an after-tax income, tax cuts at the top for both households in the top 1% and the top 5% are more than triple the total value of the tax cuts received for people with incomes in the bottom 60%. So sorry to the everyday regular Americans that are voting for Trump because, well, the economy was good. Wrong. The economy was good because Trump inherited a good economy. Trump then passed tax policies that explicitly benefited the wealthy, the rich, himself. This shit doesn't benefit everyday average Americans. It absolutely doesn't. And this right here demonstrates Kamala Harris's point. Trump has only ever had one client, himself. And his tax cuts literally demonstrate that. He passed a tax cut, tried to make it seem like it was going to be really beneficial for the middle class, and then he passed it in a way to benefit himself. He's a fucking liar, dude.
But America, we are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back. And we are charting a new way forward. Forward to a future with a strong and growing middle class, because we know a strong middle class has always been critical to America's success. And building that middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency.
Amazing. Really, really great. Again, this is the stuff that resonates with people. This is the stuff that resonates with Americans that are gonna go vote. This is the shit that appeals to people. And even more so, it again goes right into what I was saying, how Trump's tax cut did not benefit the middle class or the lower middle class. It only benefited the wealthy, ultimately.
And I will fulfill our sacred obligation to care for our troops and their families, and I will always honor and never disparage their service and their sacrifice. Trump.
Oh man, Republicans are seething. John Kelly confirms Trump privately disparaged U.S. service members and veterans. Trump called fallen soldiers suckers and losers during his presidency, according to a 2020 report in The Atlantic. So behind closed doors, Trump is calling veterans suckers and losers. According to former Trump staff, we also know that Trump was allegedly calling his supporters basement dwellers. The guy is a phony. He's a fake. He doesn't care about Americans. He doesn't care about his supporters. He doesn't even care about the troops.
On the other hand, threatened to abandon NATO. He encouraged Putin to invade our allies, said Russia could, quote, do whatever the hell they want. 5 days before Russia attacked Ukraine, I met with President Zelensky to warn him about Russia's plan to invade. I helped mobilize a global response over 50 countries to defend against Putin's aggression. With respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. And let me be clear, I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna get some eye rolls for sure on that one. Oh, man. But I know for a fact, again, Republicans are seething. They are coping. They would not have expected that from the Democrats. I know it. However, Israel is acting out of line. There needs to be something done about the fact that having the right to defend themselves or not, regardless, you can't act in a way that's so abhorrent and inappropriate. Like, you have to have boundaries and rules. There needs to be something. She's about to surprise you.
At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating.
Yo.
So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination. I will not
See, that right there is so fucking smart. That is such a good optics move. And it's also the correct position. I know that there's going to be some people saying like that's centrist bullshit or whatever. However, I think the fact that she mentioned it and addressed it is really, really good. I'm glad she did that, because before I was getting a little worried, but now this is absolutely a much more middle ground approach. Again, it's far more appealing to most Americans.
I will not cozy up to tyrants and dictators like Kim Jong-un who are rooting for Trump. They know Trump won't hold autocrats accountable because he wants to be an autocrat himself. Everywhere I go, in everyone I meet, I see a nation that is ready to move forward. You know, our opponents in this race are out there every day denigrating America, talking about how terrible everything is. Well, my mother had another lesson she used to teach. Never let anyone tell you who you are. You show them who you are.
And now, everybody, you can see why this speech appealed so well to so many people. This is why Kamala Harris is leading in the polls. She's renewing hope. She's not denigrating America. She's showing a level of understanding and respect about the foreign affairs. And she's overall expressing consistent unity. Consistent unity. She sounds like a fucking grown-up. Again, unlike Trump, who we all know would be babbling up here for God knows how long. And speaking of Trump, after about 20 minutes into Kamala Harris's speech, Trump began rapid tweeting and posting. He tweeted this on Truth Social. I guess he truthed this. He truthed this on Truth Social. And he says, is she talking about me? Anytime a woman says that she was like sexually harassed or assaulted or groped in an elevator, Trump's like, this. Is she talking about me? Anytime anybody is like just in his vicinity, is she talking about me? Because he's always just me. It's me, myself, and I for Mr. Donald J. Trump. And even funnier, Walz was an assistant coach, not a coach. Nobody gives a fuck, Donald. Where's Hunter? Feeling a little called out, but again, like, what does this have to do with anything? And then too many thank yous too rapidly said. What's going on with her? Trump's like, what? Somebody actually expressing gratitude? Being thankful? What? They must be mentally ill. There must be something wrong with this person. Nobody in their right mind would just say thank you a lot of times and express gratitude and feel appreciative or feel this thing called empathy. Oh, yeah, it was just so bad. So here he is going on a bunch of tweet sprees, just pretty much spurging out. And then to make matters worse, he was trying to distract from the DNC, which still trumped the RNC numbers. And he went and spoke at the Arizona border wall. And I haven't seen the clip, but I hear that Trump's opening to his Arizona distraction rally was absolutely unhinged.
Had time for this country in many ways. You had a candidate. I was no fan of Joe Biden, but the way he was taken out was a coup. He got 14 million votes, and the person running now got none. She was disgraced.
A coup is literally like a violent overtaking of power. In no way was implementing Kamala Harris a coup, because Biden was never nominated as the Democratic nominee. He was never nominated. So because of that, the ticket was still open. Even more so for him to say Kamala Harris got no votes. That's not true. She got as many votes as Biden because she was on the ticket.
She was figured out by the Democrat voters. She never made it to Iowa. She was the first one out of approximately 22 people that were running for the Democrat nomination. She never even made it to Iowa. Beautiful place, Iowa. But she didn't. Plenty of people did. And Biden got 14 million votes. She got no votes. And now she's running against us. The good news is I think we're winning in the polls based on what I'm seeing.
Okay, yeah, this was absolutely unhinged. Trump was again defeated. And we all know that Trump takes TV ratings very seriously. So yes, it does say here the DNC outperformed the RNC in a category that will probably vex Trump, as Democrats made the case for their presidential nominee this week. An average of 21.8 million viewers tuned in over 4 days to watch the events in Chicago. According to the Nielsen data, viewership numbers for the Democratic National Convention eclipsed the Republican National Convention's 19.1 million average viewers in July. The final night of the DNC drew 26.2 million viewers, slightly higher than the 25.3 million who watched the last night of the Republican Convention. Oh no. It's just so funny though to like just watch him wallow constantly. He's just floundering at this point. Then to make matters even worse, the RNC led to another fallout among some Republicans when Tim Walz gave his speech. Now, I'm sure you're all aware that when Tim Walz was giving his speech, his son, Gus Walz, broke down and got very emotional. It was a really touching, wholesome moment, and I'll show you that clip now.
If you've never experienced the hell that is infertility, I guarantee you know somebody who has. And I can remember praying each night for a phone call. The pit in your stomach when the phone would ring, and the absolute agony when we heard the treatments hadn't worked. It took Gwen and I years, but we had access to fertility treatments. And when our daughter was born, we named her Hope. Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love you. I'm letting you in on how we started a family, because this is a big part about what this election is about.
So that was the moment that was incredibly wholesome, incredibly sweet. Here is a nonverbal, neurodivergent teenager getting emotional because his dad is expressing to millions of people how much he loves him and his kids. It's a touching, wholesome moment. But of course, the soulless ghouls that are the Republicans, that are the MAGA-tards, were quick to pounce on this for some reason and attack this guy, all for being appreciative of his father. MAGA mocks Tim Walz's son for crying during DNC speech. MAGA-affiliated accounts on social media have mocked Tim Walz's 17-year-old neurodivergent son, Gus, for crying during his father's speech at the Democratic National Convention on Wednesday. Gus Walz, who has ADHD along with a nonverbal learning disorder and an anxiety disorder, and his mom, Gwen Walz, were crying when the Democratic vice presidential nominee gave them a shout out before the roaring crowd. One account posted the clip and said, "Beta maxing." Again, calling somebody a beta for having emotion. Listen, if anybody here doesn't believe in toxic masculinity, and again, by toxic masculinity, I mean certain expectations surrounding how you should portray your masculinity. If you really want to deny that there are toxic expectations surrounding masculinity, then just look at this as a counter to that argument. Why is this guy being called a beta for expressing emotion? It wasn't always like that. We've decided, for some reason, to look down upon people who are crying. If a man is crying, then he's a beta and acting like a woman. If a woman is crying, then she's unhinged, she's irrational, and she's acting like a baby. Like, it's just ridiculous that there are still people out there denying that toxic masculinity is a thing, but this right here fucking proves it. Another user, Alec Lace, a Trump supporter who hosts a podcast about fatherhood, replied to the clip, writing, "Get that kid a tampon already." Again, if a man cries, what's happening now? He's acting like a woman. And if a woman cries, then what happens? Well, she's acting irrational and unhinged, illogical. She's a baby. She needs to go home. She's on her period. Crying in general is looked down upon and is mocked, but both men and women are criticized for expressing emotion in different ways. So again, the notion that somebody is crying because their father's speech moved them, that makes sense to express emotion. It actually makes you, this guy that tweeted, "Get that kid a tampon already," kind of makes him seem like a psychopath. Because most natural and normal human beings are going to see that clip and find it really wholesome and touching. So not only was Gus Walz attacked on Twitter by a bunch of soulless degenerates, he was also attacked by Ann Coulter, former coke addict turned skeleton, decided to start attacking Gus Walz for, again, showing some emotion. Conservative firebrand Ann Coulter posted an article on X about Gus' emotional reaction with a lead photo of the teenager in tears. She captioned it, "Talk about weird." If the sight of a neurodivergent teenager getting emotional after their dad is praising them and talking about how much they love them and how proud they are of them, if that doesn't move you or invoke some kind of a emotion inside of you, you are in fact the weird one. Okay, like if you look at somebody crying because they're so touched by the speech and you think they're weird, no, boo, you're the fucking weird one. The Republicans, by attacking Gus Walz like this, led to other Republicans that are a little bit more sane trying to defend Gus Walz, which now what is happening is more division amongst the Republicans. Now, Gus Walz, Tim Walz, they seem a hell of a lot more human and like a family, whereas the Republicans seem like these creepy fucking weirdos that are shitting on people for having a wholesome family moment. A handful of Republicans have spoken out in defense of Tim Walz's 17-year-old son, who was mocked by several MAGA-affiliated accounts online after getting emotional over his father's speech. Conservative podcaster Ben Shapiro, who is a supporter of Trump, said in a post on X Thursday that Gus Walz's reaction is really quite nice. Meghan McCain, daughter of the late Republican Senator John McCain, also criticized any accounts who were attacking Gus. I honestly can't believe there is any conversation about Walz's family read McCain's post. Conventions are very intense experiences, and outward displays of love should be celebrated. Any Republican saying otherwise is just helping destroy more of the GOP's credibility and aiding a Trump loss. Based, and very true. Interesting, I'm surprised to see Matt Walsh. Conservative media personality Matt Walsh also defended against any right-wingers who were bashing Gus Walz's reaction. Attacking a kid for loving his dad is the dumbest move I've seen by right-wingers on this site in a while. Literally no benefit to it at all. Some people on our side have no ability to think strategically. Frustrating. POV, Matt Walsh learning that the right wing is fucking horrible. Woke Matt Walsh. Dude, Matt Walsh is going woke. What happened? So what did we see? We saw massive ratings. We saw ratings that beat Trump. We saw Republicans divided against each other. We see Trump further slipping in the polls. And we saw Kamala Harris's really powerful speech calling for more unity and actually offering hope rather than just shitting on America and talking about how bad everything is all day. This is the kind of stuff that people want. This is the kind of shit that resonates with everyday Americans. Corpse Bride Ann Coulter calling fucking Gus Walz weird for crying, that doesn't resonate with anybody.